prediction science behind me, prediction experience. But the difference was in stocks. It's like it's like I only could legally recommend stocks that my company covered, and I worked for a company called Oldie, which we had our own in-house research group, but we were one of the smallest. So like it was a universe of like 95 stocks. And so, of those 95 stocks, I would pick 4 or 5 that I liked, and I would just tout those. But now that you're a baseball guy, you have to have an opinion on 600 players and another 600 minor leaguers. And there's the smartest guy on the radio, the smartest guy writing, God love Lenny Melnick. He doesn't know 1,200 players. No one does. So you make these. So what you wind up doing is you wind up like throwing out 100 predictions, right? And the really cool ones get remembered, but the truth is you're only right. Like, I mean, I can tell you as a stockbroker, like they used to keep records on when I was predicting right and when I was predicting wrong, and I was actually above 50%. The thing that I knew that no one else knew was that my one wrong was super wrong. It wasn't just kind of wrong. It was just horrifically wrong. But are you still there? I don't hear anything. Hello? I'm talking to myself. Well...
Sorry, I have a hard time undoing my mute button sometimes. No, I was there.
No, I just wait.
I just was
like how do I mean, like, I think what Chris O'Leary does is really good, but there is this thing. It's like if you say that 30 people are going to get hurt, and 3 of them get hurt, does that make you an oracle, or does it just make you like? Hey, so I did the due diligence, and I go, these guys have indicators that say they're going to get hurt, and you can see that I've been right on 3 of 5 of these guys. Which I think is the way you should take those sort of things. Or like when I make a prediction,
and I don't necessarily think he's predicting that everyone's going to get hurt. What he's saying is there's a flawed method of teaching. That's essentially what if you read what he says, essentially there's a flawed method of teaching, and they're teaching these guys. Okay, so instead of teaching guys to I guess work their mechanics, and I asked him this specific question because I was very curious, and essentially. Instead of, because he feels like, and I always thought this, Nolan Ryan and Justin Verlander are 2 guys that have outstanding mechanics according to this guy, and they've never broken down. And so I asked him, I said, so why aren't more pitching coaches teaching mechanics like Verlander and Nolan Ryan? Who are they teaching like? And he said he said you'd be surprised. He said the majority of them model them after guys like Mark Pryor and guys that are like prone to breaking down. But it's because they can do, and he explained this, and he explains it a lot in his articles. They do these mechanical tweaks that will gain you velocity, like 8-9 miles an hour in velocity, really fast, like in a day. But those small tweaks ultimately end up breaking down because they put undue stress on your UCL, and that's the big thing he's trying to teach right now. And I told him, dude, I said, look, if you get to the point where you're ready to do a facility and start teaching people like Driveline's doing and start teaching another method, because I said that's the only way you're ever going to prove what you're doing is correct, is you to open up a facility, start teaching your way, and prove that your way keeps guys from getting Tommy John surgeries. Because right now that's the biggest epidemic that is an unknown factor in all of Major League sports and Major League Baseball.
The problem is that the people, what you're looking at is you're looking at these guys that are like 16 to 21 or whatever, right? And they're like looking for college scholarships or getting on a traveling team or getting drafted or whatever.
Sure.
And it's like having a really good form on a 92 mile an hour fastball may not get you noticed, but having a little bit of weird form on a 96 one will get you noticed.
Sure, I get it. It's like, I get why guys do it, but if there's ultimately a better way to teach somebody and still gain the same velocity, then that method needs to be proven.
Is there a way to do that? I mean, like the only way I can say it is I can buy the argument that these tweaks, I've seen them with my own eyes. I've coached Little League baseball. I watched. I was on a board at Maitland, so at a park, so I know all the way up to like age 15 or whatever. I've seen the tweaks happen where people jump. A guy was throwing 77, next year he's throwing 88, and it's really not because he got bigger. It's because he got more efficient. And if those tweaks are what's causing the problem, then the guy's got a point. But if those tweaks aren't causing the problem,
he specifically talks about one called the Tommy John twist. Okay, where you basically point your hand at second base when you throw the ball, and you twist your wrist to a flipping motion. It's supposed to gain you. It's supposed to gain you immediate gains in velocity.
Really?
But he said that's ultimately one of the big things that leads. Dude, I'm telling you, I've read pretty much this guy's entire library
it's one of the
information.
things.
I just was so curious about it because it's one of those things where I'm a baseball nerd, and I've been always curious why
when
pitchers are continuously broken down like this, and others haven't.
I watch people teaching 5 and 6 year olds when they're going to throw, like by moving your hand up and pointing at the spot that you go to, that you can throw with more accuracy, and it does sort of force your body into this motion that keeps you a little bit more centered, but it does make you over time develop what probably is still known as, but is a subset of it's the larger set of the Tommy John twist, which was the inverted W, right? And like,
sure,
they're teaching it to kids at age 5, at age 6.
I don't know why we would be teaching something like the inverted W that has been proven to break down pitchers, such as Steven Strasburg is a prime example of a guy that uses it. Because the problem, we've already seen what's happened to him. He breaks down every year.
The problem is that when they're 5 years old, they're not pitchers. They're just trying to get the ball 25 feet to first base.
Sure.
And so if you can use the raised arm as a balancing thing for a child that has only been able to bounce his body upright for 9 months, then they do it. And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I was coach of the team. I stopped them from doing it. It's like, trust me, I'd rather have him throw it wild now than get hurt 15 years from now. And that's a weird ass thing to say. But that's what I meant. It's like, no, he should just be able to do this thing. It should be in his leg. Point with the leg. Teach him to point with the leg. He can bounce with the leg. But they're also it's not like
everything's
not like the greatest baseball minds
driven right now.
Well, no, that's the thing. Is like you want to get that's the reason why the people in the third world countries like Dominican or whatever, like stealing people's birth certificates because they know that if they're 19 they won't be looked at, but if they're 17 they will. It's like you need to get spotted. I mean, this is if you can make it to the major leagues, that's $1 million in your pocket, and not making it there means not $1 million in your pocket. What would you do to do that? I mean,
it's really funny you say that. So I saw a tweet yesterday or a couple days ago that said Yoenis Cespedes' brother, I forget his name, is he's defecting from Cuba. And my first response was, well, where the hell's the hype video at? Because don't you remember the hype videos that came from Yoenis Cespedes of him working out, where he was like jumping over freaking fences with 40-pound weights attached to him?
Those hype videos happen. I mean, we might still get it, but it's like
I just need that in my life.
They couldn't produce those in Cuba, right? But the system is such that you can't really just defect from Cuba to the United States easily. So what you do is you defect from Cuba to Mexico. You wind up living there for 4 months, and that's when you do the hype video. That's when Cespedes did the hype video.
Okay, so keep me tuned.
Yoenis is a Mexican citizen now, and of course, if they build the wall, he may never play.
God damn it!
But no, that is the thing. It's like there was like I was telling you that about the like as fantasy guys, I know that most people that listen to this are like 45-year-old and older white men, and they're the people that disagree with me politically on almost everything. But it's like, if you read the stories about what's going on with Cuba, we almost had a deal to make Cuban defection legitimate. One player did it. One player got through the legitimate section. It's like the story. I remember reading this thing. There was this day like 6 years ago. Maybe not that long ago, like 4 years ago, where Yasiel Puig just didn't show up for a Friday night game. They actually activated Matt Kemp a day early to take a spot, and everyone's going, "What a weirdo! Just not showing up for a game." Then like the next day, he comes in early, talks to the thing, and he's starting the next day, and you're like thinking like, how could a player just not show up for a game and get absolutely no penalty, right? Well, it turns out the story is like in order to get out of Cuba, like he had to pay drug runners to pick him up at the Bay of Pigs and drive, because the only guys with the fast enough boats. They have the cigarette boats that can run, cocaine and pot and stuff. And so like they pay those guys stuff, and then they have to pay them a certain amount of money every month or whatever. And it turned out that he mispaid somebody a certain amount of money, so they abducted his dad in Cuba. Right? And so the reason he missed that Friday is because he was trying to scramble and get money together. So when he went into the Dodgers and said, they're like, well, we can't have you goofing off, you little whatever. It's like, why did you miss that day? It's, well, my dad was kidnapped by drug kingpins, and he was going to be murdered if I didn't get him $40,000. And they went, well, that's a good enough excuse. But the thing about
Pretty much, right? God damn, I did not know that story.
Yeah, but no, because if they didn't let it out that day, but it was like it was written up like in the more detailed magazines, like over the winter when they had things to write. Like, I mean, I literally read it like waiting for a haircut somewhere. I believe it was in ESPN the magazine, and it's like holy mackerel. But the truth is, like, if you went up to Aroldis Chapman and asked him, "What's your deal with the Mexican drug lords?" he would walk away from you like you were, bubonic plague. He's like, I'm not going to talk to any human being about this because if I do this, they're going to kill my sister. And that's literally what those guys are going. No, the thing, Aroldis Chapman will like leave the room like he was a Jesuit priest, attacked by Satan or something. It's like because they tried to get those other guys, and literally any Cuban that comes across probably has the same deal, and that was why they tried to make.
They still have to pay the money.
Yeah, normally there's a pay figure over time, but as long as you're playing, you're going to pay something. They generally don't. If once your contract runs out, it's not like they're going to kill you over that once you don't have the money coming. But as long as you're there, you got to pay 20% or 15% or whatever it is. And so, yeah, a lot of our baseball dollars goes to the drug kingpins in Mexico. And it kind of makes you feel good. And you know how many people those guys murder.
That's quite the racket, though, man. That's pretty impressive.
Well, those are the stories of the stories of baseball no one wants to hear, but they're nonetheless true. That's why, it's like the new administration cut off that deal, and that is really kind of bad because it basically gave a system where a Cuban player could petition to come to the pros, and there would be like a one-time payout to the Cuban government as opposed to an overtime payout to Mexican drug lords, and we thought that was preferential, but
I don't know why that would be thought to be necessary to be changed.
I mean, it's no different than what you have to pay a Japanese team to get their player back. It's like yeah, you can have the player, but you have to give us $50,000. But
yeah, I'm ready for the next big hype international player. We haven't had one since Ohtani. It's been a couple years now.
I mean, there've been a couple guys. Who's that kid? Marco Luciano came across this year, 16-year-old.
Yeah, I want like a hype one though. I want like the next I remember when Cespedes came over, it was such a big deal.
I mean, how many of those guys were there? How many of those guys were there really? There was Cespedes, there was Ohtani, there was of course Suzuki and Nomo and Matsuzaka.
Yeah, Tanaka.
Tanaka was
he was a huge deal. Yeah, it was way big when he came over, man. Because he was married to that pop star, and it was such a huge deal when he came over. Same thing with God damn it, what's his name? He plays for Chicago now. Come on, what's your Japanese pitcher? Tell me out here.
Pitcher? We have Yu Darvish.
Thank you, Yu Darvish. I could not think of his name for a second.
So when you said Chicago, dude, I'm thinking of Kosuke Fukudome, and I'm like, really? You're gonna go there already?
Yeah. No. I'm like, now he plays for Chicago. He's played for Texas, but yeah, Yu Darvish is a bit. He was hype. I just need that hype player, I love that.
We had Kikuchi this year, which like we both. You said you didn't like it that much, and the truth is, I mean,
he's gonna win me a bet this year, and I'm not even really caring about it.
I didn't think he was gonna be that bad, but I thought he was gonna be a serviceable points league pitcher.
I knew he was gonna have an ERA over 4, and especially in this run scoring environment, which is out of control right now.
But the other big pitcher signee from the Asian League is doing pretty decently. Of course, he doesn't have a Japanese name. His name is Merrill Kelly. He came from KBO.
I picked him up today, in fact.
That was a guy that I remember in those early drafts with the Legend League. Like they're going like, who should I pick for this 20th round? I go, Merrill Kelly's still out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I didn't think he was gonna be great, but it's like why not? Why not take a chance on a guy like this who shows that he can strike out people in the KBO and not walk a lot of people? And playing in the KPO can't be much worse than playing in Chase Field in Arizona. So I'm not thinking the world of the guy, but I mean, the thing about it, you ever see like the KBO, like the leader in ERA will have like a 3.25 ERA, 3.22 ERA, and there'll be like three guys that'll be under four, but like the 10th best pitcher will have like a 4.60 ERA, because it's like every field's Coors Field, you know. They play with ping
Really?
pong. They play with ping pong balls, 200 feet to center field. That kind of.
And so that's one of the things I want to do in my lifetime is go. Goddamn, Max Muncy just said it's another homer. I want to go over to Japan and Korea and go watch some baseball. I think that'd be way too much fun.
Well, that was sort of like, I mean, you know, you kind of look for